The National Association of Bar Executives at age 50. We trace the birth of NABE to the year 1941. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was in his 9th year as President of the United States. In Europe and in the Pacific, the world was marching toward a devastating war. That year, the ABA annual meeting was in Indianapolis, and on the schedule was a meeting of the newly formed Association Secretaries Committee of the ABA section of Bar Organization Activities. Hardly a catchy name, and a fairly awkward acronym. This committee of a section of the ABA was the first formal organization for bar staff. Over the next 23 years, the name changed no fewer than 6 times as the committee became a conference and finally an association. When it became the Conference of Association Secretaries in 1946, it gained some autonomy from the ABA. Through the 1950s, the organization was still one for bar secretaries, but the use of the title Executive Secretary and even Executive Director was starting to surface in the growing association world. In 1962, the word executive shows up for the first time, reflecting its widespread use in bar associations. In August 1964, we became the National Association of Bar Executives, presided over for the first time by a president, John H. Holloway of Oregon. Until then, our leader had been called the chair. But let's return to 1941. Emma Elizabeth Dillon, Secretary of the New Jersey State Bar Association, was chair of the Association Secretaries Committee and is thus our founding leader. Born in 1893, she was a pioneer in the legal profession. She was admitted to practice in 1926 and became secretary of the New Jersey Bar in 1935, the first, and for many years, the only woman secretary of a state bar. Emma Dillon not only chaired our organization for the first 2 years of its existence, she returned to chair its successor, the National Conference of Bar Secretaries in 1956-57, near the end of her 24-year career at the New Jersey Bar. Emma Dillon died in 1964 at age 71. The staffs of bar associations in 1991, specialized and computerized as we are, bear no resemblance to the association secretaries of 1941. Paid full-time staff was a relatively new idea then. Typically, the elected office of Bar Association Secretary was converted to a part or full-time paid position. Duties included maintaining the mailing list and publishing a bar journal or the record of meetings. Our ranks grew slowly in the 1940s and 50s. In 1958, when Edward Smith was hired as the first executive of the Rhode Island Bar Association, he also became the first full-time state bar executive in all of New England. Rapid growth came in the 60s as bar associations added staff to accommodate increasing demands for services by their members. As staffs diversified, so did NABE. Sections began with creation in 1974 of the Public Relations and Communications section, followed by the Governmental Relations section in 1983, and then the CLE section. From the organizing efforts of a handful of bar association secretaries 50 years ago, NABE has both reflected the growth of bar associations and been a leader in shaping the scope and quality of bar association services. The National Association of Bar Executives, after 50 years. The National Association of Bar Executives at age 50. Above all else, NABE is about people, all of the people who have been members and contributed to the development of our profession. One person whose name lives on through NABE is Fred Bolton, for whom the Delegate Fred and Bolton Award is named. Ted Stelwag remembers Fred Bolton.
Fred Bolton was, in many ways, a larger-than-life figure, one of that vanishing breed of bar execs. Fred was president of NABE 20 years ago, following Madrid Williams of Georgia. He was executive director of the Pennsylvania Bar from 1967 until his death 10 years later. Fred's years at PBA have been called the Bolton era, which he would have found a tad embarrassing. His full name was Frederick Hershey Bolton. His mother was a cousin of Milton Hershey. He was a big bear of a man, a 60-minute football player in high school. In World War II, he served in the Army Counterintelligence Corps and worked on the Manhattan Project. Fred was the quintessential patriot. He was also a passionate man, passionate first about his family, in love with the law and the organized bar he did so much to shape in Pennsylvania. He was a major player in transforming PBA from a largely social organization to a real bar association with all the trimmings. He was passionate as all get out about golf, a game which humbled him as it has so many others. Fred was most especially passionate about NABE. He loved being in the company of bar execs, and oh, how he would have enjoyed this 50th birthday celebration. In February 1976, Fred hosted an excursion from the NABE meeting in Philadelphia to our Pennsylvania Bar Center in Harrisburg and dinner at the Hershey Country Club. The evening ended with Fred demonstrating his dexterity at the curling rink downstairs. He was not above just a little showing off. 1 year later, Fred made his last trip to an NABE meeting. He had cancer and was very weak from it, but he was determined to make that long goodbye trip to Seattle. He died that August. In his memory, Reggie Hamner suggested the creation of the Delegate Fred Award, now called the Bolton Award, to be given at each annual meeting. The award recognizes the personality and professionalism which were at the core of Fred's being. It is the highest honor we can bestow upon our peers. Reggie remembers Fred as a man of unabashed commitment, a perfect adjective. When our Pennsylvania Bar Center was rededicated in 1975, we surprised Fred with a small plaque on the wall of his bathroom. It said, "This area is set aside in tribute to the man who will use it most, ite in pacem." Fred loved that little plaque. He dragged everybody into his bathroom to see it. His plaque is still there, and that's still our wish for Fred. Ite in pacem. Go in peace.
The Delegate Fred Award and Bolton Award plaques are prominently displayed at the Pennsylvania Bar Center. One recipient, former Illinois State Bar Association Executive Director John Dickinson, remembers when his name was added.
Seems to me that the increasing professionalism of the association and of the members is significant and is especially epitomized by the Bolton Award for Professional Excellence, named after our good and old friend Fred Bolton. One of my proudest times was when I received that award. You can earn an officership in this organization, but you can't earn the Bolton Award. It has to be given to you because of the grace and generosity of the selection committee. To this day, I hold that award as one of those which I treasure the most, and it does to me epitomize that which the NABE and its members are after, and that is professionalism, and I think that is evidenced every year when you see new programs, the new directory listing that which the group is now doing, and I congratulate all of you for that.
Fred Bolton, one member of NABE who helped shape the progress of our association and whose memory will live on in the next 50 years. The National Association of Bar Executives, after 50 years. The National Association of Bar Executives at age 50. Bar executives work hard. On occasion, they also have been known to play hard. Former Illinois State Bar Association Executive Director John Dickinson remembers one such occasion in February 1975, the Order of the Bell and Bottle.
Years ago, when the ABA had one of their mid-year meetings in Chicago, we decided we needed to bring the bar execs down to Springfield to see the new bar center, which had just been completed. How could we do that? We rented ourselves a couple of railroad cars, hooked them on the back of a regular train, and off we went. We really did have educational programs on the way down. We toured the Lincoln Shrines, and then we went to the Illinois Bar Center, where we had ourselves a nice little cocktail party with some vodka punch. Shortly thereafter, we got back on the train going to Chicago, and we continued the cocktail party, and it became boisterous and a whole lot of fun. During the day, I had been using a cowbell to move people along because it was kind of a full day, and after a while, my cowbell was gone, probably because I had rung it one or two times too many. At the business meeting the following Sunday morning, my cowbell was returned to me, engraved Order of the Bell and Bottle, and on it was also the inscription to John H. Dickinson, Chief Dingaling, and to this day, I remember that affair of the Order and the Bell and Bottle.
Marshal Cassidy had the 8mm camera going during the Springfield train trip. Some of the highlights included a trip to the Abraham Lincoln Law Office and an official portrait on the steps of the old state capitol building. Kay Runyon of the Hennepin County, Minnesota Bar, second from the left, was NABE president at the time. The cocktail party on the return trip to Chicago loosened up several singing voices. Another NABE social highlight occurred at the 1973 mid-year meeting in Cleveland.
Yes, we had a mid-year meeting in Cleveland, Ohio, and Peter Roper was in charge. And so Peter took all the NABE people to Little Italy, a section of Cleveland that was very nice, wonderful restaurants. And I think the group of us drank all the wine that was ever shipped out of Italy to the United States that night. The last thing I remember doing was walking on the ceiling of the bus that was transporting us from Little Italy back to our hotel. So you know, I had a good time, and it was a good time.
The National Association of Bar Executives, after 50 years. The National Association of Bar Executives, at age 50. From its beginning and through the years, the National Association of Bar Executives' primary purpose has been to improve the professionalism of bar staff. When Marshal Cassidy became executive director of the Florida Bar in 1961, NABE provided a chance to grow professionally and help others grow.
So what about professionalism? Did NABE grow professionally with the membership and the individual members of NABE? Yes, it did. When we started out in the early 60s and late 50s, most of the bar executives had the title of secretary. They were, in many instances, nothing more than a scrivener. We tried to change that image and change their responsibilities, giving them the title of either executive vice president or executive director, trying to develop in them greater responsibilities, make them more innovative, make them more enthusiastic about their jobs, and play a greater role in their particular local or state bar associations. We helped each other. Golly, when I started in 1961, I knew nothing about managing a bar association. And the only source of learning or knowledge or experience came from people like Phil Haberman, Wade Baker, Crazy Frank Bolbach, John Dickinson, Madrid Williams, wonderful executive director from Georgia. All of those people and so many more helped me to get started and develop my professionalism. Our goal at that time was really to have all the membership of NABE truly first-class association managers. We worked very hard on that. At the same time, NABE as an organization worked on its professionalism. At first, I think, within the bar establishment in the United States, we were looked upon as almost a revolutionary group. Who would think that these secretaries of these associations would form their own group and talk about salaries and fringe benefits and all those good things? Well, we did it, and we grew, and we developed better relationships with the National Conference of Bar Presidents. And so the whole professionalism, both of the individual bar exec and the organization itself, in my opinion, grew together to the benefit of both and to the benefit of all state and local bar associations throughout the United States.
Not all NABE education programs were on serious topics. This lecture was about how to dress for success. In some cases, the message didn't take. This is the Executive Committee in 1981. At the 1979 annual meeting, 5 male bar execs were called forward by a seminar leader who wanted to sensitize them to how women feel when they're appreciated for their bodies and not their minds. Mixing education and fun was the goal at the 1985 annual meeting. Dressed up as bartenders, bar execs offered one-on-one counseling to fellow members on numerous hot-button issues and had a good time while doing it. Marshall Cassidy remembers NABE programs for improving bar execs professionally and personally.
It was truly an exciting time, and we were young and eager, and we did the very best we could. And we brought in outside speakers from all over the nation to help develop these professional traits, and it paid benefits for all of us because our salaries increased. And where we used to have no benefits at all, we soon had benefits for all ourselves individually as well as our staffs, and this was a real plus.
The National Association of Bar Executives, after 50 years. The National Association of Bar Executives, at age 50. There is much more history of NABE than we can possibly tell in 20 minutes of video, but we do have a few more historic moments, some important, some less so, that we'll share in closing. You know about Delegate Fred Bolton from Pennsylvania, but you may not know about Delegate Frank. As told by Ed Smith, former executive director of the Rhode Island Bar, Fred Bolton and Frank Bolduc of the New Jersey Bar were the 2 delegates on the NABE Executive Committee in the late 1960s. Fred Bolton was tall, soft-spoken, and urbane. Frank Bolduc was shorter, muscular, and brash. Fred approached issues in a studious manner. Frank would charge full speed ahead and bowl over the opposition. Both were well respected by their NABE colleagues and were affectionately known as Delegate Fred and Delegate Frank. One significant educational effort directed at bar leaders was the Key Handbook, a series of monographs for, and in many cases by, bar executives published by the ABA. In periodic installments from 1965 to 1974, the Key Handbook was as indispensable a tool as there was available on such topics as administration, meeting planning, bar programs, and public relations. The Key Handbook became one of Alan Kurland's projects when he joined the ABA as staff director for state and local bar services in the early 70s. Alan Kurland, another standout name in NABE's history. Since its establishment in 1974, the Public Relations and Communications section has proven its value many times. Publication of 30 PR winners and its sequel, another 30 PR winners, are cases in point. E.A. Wally Richter, on the right, for whom the section's Leadership Award is named, presented another section project, the Case for Communications, to 1981 President Jack Lyle, second from left. One reason to belong to an organization like NABE is to borrow good ideas from others who've done it already. Bar execs would be notorious for stealing if it weren't for the generous spirit of sharing that seems to afflict all NABE members. Marshall Cassidy remembers sharing some slightly barbed ideas once with bar presidents.
The most memorable program I was ever on was with my friend J.B. Walsh. You may remember that he was the executive director of the Bar Association of Erie County, New York. Great guy, big, heavy-set guy, some of you know him. We had a little skit where he played the role of the new president of the Bar Association. I was the executive director. We did this skit before the National Conference of Bar Presidents. We talked about things such as ensuring that the president and his spouse had the largest suite at all board meetings, including the annual convention, how the executive director could take steps to increase the expense account of the bar president, and such other critical matters facing the Bar Association at that time. We did the skit. The bar presidents liked it well enough to invite us back a second year, and that was a fun occasion, and it was a memorable one for me.
There's one other brief note. At the 1967 NABE Executive Committee meeting, President Alice O'Leary Rawls reported the 25-year history project was over budget. The committee agreed to pay for publishing the history, which had mushroomed to a grand sum of $301. From 1941 to 1991, NABE has grown into a large and talented organization, reflecting the growth of services provided by bar associations to their members and the public. We have a rich history and a bright future. The National Association of Bar Executives, after 50 years.